Hello and welcome to the magic of fishing. Today you join me on a glorious early December morning. We're heading into winter and this is my first trip for a couple of weeks. I was up in the dark, in the cold, and I've driven about 45 minutes away from my home in Woking towards Dockenfield in Surrey. I'm actually close to a famous fishing venue, Frensham Great Pond, which is steeped in angling history. It's been around for centuries and it's run by Farnham Angling Society. And I was lucky enough to watch the first light of day creep into the sky over that magnificent lake. I drove a few minutes further on to find the River Wey, and some of you may have seen me fish this river, a tributary of the Thames near my home in Woking. But today I've come to a brand new stretch of river, about 1.5 miles of river that's run by Farnham Angling Society, and the walk here over the fields as the sun's been coming up over the horizon absolutely taken my breath away. It really has made it feel worthwhile getting up so early and being on the bank for first light. I can't wait to get cracking. I've never fished here before and I'm just going to be fishing for bites. It's the first time I've been by the water in a couple of weeks, which makes it all the more exciting. But I've just brought some simple float gear and a feeder rod if we need it, and I'm going to be roving up and down the banks with a bit of bread, a few worms and some maggots, and just fishing for whatever pulls the float under. That's my kind of fishing, and I'll hope you'll enjoy it too. And this is the very first spot I've arrived at. A really tight bend, almost a loop in the river, and if you look down to the right downstream there's a really nice overhanging tree, and I'm looking forward to trotting down towards that, perhaps see if there's any chub around, but anything will do me. But let's get some bread mashed first and get some feed in before we cast the line. I think we'll start with bread, and if we're scratching for bites we'll try maggots. But I've got all day. They're only short days in December of course, but got a good few hours ahead of me, and it is supposed to be dry. It's pretty cold, single digits, but there's a bit of colour in the water. We've had plenty of rain over the weekend and I'm hoping that's put the fish on the feed and not put them off, but we'll see. Let's get the rod. Just using a 14-foot match rod, small reel, 4-pound line, and I've got one of these very funky new Drennan Avon style floats given to me by Mike at Apollo Angling in Byfleet. Cheers Mike. Titanium stems, would you believe? So a bit different to some of the floats I've been using in recent videos, handmade specials from my mate Andy at Black Bottom Floats. But this does look really nice, big visible tip for long trotting, so let's give it a go. I've just been plumbing up, which you can do when you've got a 3.5 gram Olivet only a foot or so away from the hook, because if the float's not cocking properly you know that's on the bottom. So I've been plumbing up using that, and it's probably about 5 foot. It's good depth. Always exciting having a first cast on a brand new piece of river. No idea what to expect. But there's definitely a bit of colour in. Of course in some rivers that helps, and in others you can turn the fish off. Into a bit shallower there. That's better, now it's running through without pulling under. Really does look chubby down under that tree. And every time I reel in without the bait, I'll be feeding it, just leaving that extra little piece of bread fluttering down on top of the mash that I'm putting in. It's a very visual bait. Probably best when the river is a bit clearer or the water you're fishing is a bit clearer, but there's some visibility down there. It's not really muddy. Nice steady flow. It's right down into the lion's den. Not brought a seat with me today, I'm just sitting on an unhooking mat because the grass is really wet and laden with dew and the rain that we had over the last 48 hours. Could have been a bite. But keeping the gear down to the bare minimum, making it easy to move around. As promising as this bend looks, and I may well give it another go before heading back to the car, of course. There's so much to explore. The sun's getting up, so I'm excited to see what else lies further upstream. I'm going to walk up towards the top end, but anywhere that looks like it could have a few fish, both in the current and also down in the slacks. I'll just put a little bit of mash bread so we can come back to it later. Just look at this for early winter scenery. Okay, so there's no frost and snow on the ground just yet. Not like there was when I was up in Sheffield the other weekend, but majestic countryside and only a few pheasants to break the peace, not another soul around. You can see how wet it's been in the last couple of days. Yet more rain and the Thames will be unfishable, but if you come up to the headwaters, you've got more chance of the river being in a fishable condition. And this is towards the top end of the way, somewhere I've never seen, let alone fished. It looks brilliant. Just remains to be seen whether the fish are going to be in a biting mood, particularly after all the rain. Now that's not a bad pad, is it? Not a bad garden down to the river either. I think it'd be rude not to have a go on this stunning little glide before we move on. And to kneel down for this one. Again, that's why an unhooking mat is ideal. You can sit on it, kneel on it. And if you're lucky enough to catch a whopper, you can carefully unhook it on it. Nice slow, steady run this. Again, still trying to work out where the fish in this river might be. Are they in the deeper pools, the smooth glides, the tight bends under the snags? It's always a challenge when you're on a brand new piece of water. And we've got our first River Wey fish, certainly from this stretch. Second swim, lovely silvery dace, really silvery, looks like a pearl. Stunning little fish. And that is always nice to get your first fish on a new piece of water, slipping back. And that was after switching over to double maggot. Gave the bread flake a good dozen runs down and there were no indications. First trot down with a few maggots and the float went down right at the end of the trot. I actually thought it might have been dragging. But lovely to connect with that first fish and know that there are a few in the mood on this cold December day. So I'll keep a bit of maggot going in and we'll see whether there are any others to be caught. Beautiful with the low winter sun slanting onto that bright orange float tip. Really does glow in the sun. And there's not so many leaves coming down the river now. Last time I was out on running water a couple of weeks ago on the River Blackwater, the surface was covered in leaves and it was sometimes hard to see the float, but that's not a problem now. And I'm also hoping most of the weed has died back and washed away. That can be the joy of trotting in winter. There's a lot less to drag the float under. Not got the centre pin with me today, I'm using a fixed spool reel. One or two of you commented on my last video that it was getting a bit clunky. And I think you're right. So I've got a contact at JW Young's and he kindly said to post it up and they'll take a look at it, give it a service. It was probably overdue. When I'm really long trotting like this, I don't mind using a fixed spool at all because it is quicker on the retrieve. And if you're making a lot of retrieves in fast flowing water like this, it can make that side of things a bit easier. It's nice to think that there might be another dace or two down there. I have been told by Trev, my mate and the fisheries manager at Farnham Angling Society, that it's not a stretch of river known for big fish. There are some nice chub and some nice perch in, but it tends to be roach, dace, smaller silvers, but we'll see whether I can add to that dace. He may be a tiddler, but that is the second species of the day. A lovely little gudgeon. So just a little dace and a little gudgeon out of this swim, and this can often be the case in winter, of course. Hard to tell on an unfamiliar piece of river, but it is often about finding the fish, and if you're lucky you may just find a big old shoal of roach or dace or a pocket of perch or a little gang of chub. But it is a case of not only trying different swims but searching each swim, keeping a bit of bait trickling in without overfeeding. And it does seem, for now at least, they may be a lone fish, or certainly the single fish that we're willing to feed. So I'll give it another 3 or 4 runs down and then we'll move further upriver. So much to explore. And out we come into the open. The sun's up, and although it might not be ideal fishing conditions, now it's this bright, I am not complaining. Just look at that view. And I may be here to explore the river with a float, but when I saw that sunken tree on this tight bend, I just had to put a little cage feeder down there with a big chunk of bread flake on the hook, and I'll leave that fishing down there while I have a quick go on the float down in this slack. Well, I've now walked up to the end of the Farnham stretch. A very intriguing little estate lake beyond, but private property, so I'm going to leave that well alone, get back to the river. Well, it could have been a bite in the bread. Try another run down. And we've got one on bread. That's really satisfying. What is it? Oh, it's a lovely little chublet. That's a net job. Only because I'm so far away from the water. Let's get that telescopic net out. Lovely fish. on a cold winter's day. And upon unhooking it and having a closer look, that's actually a clonking dace. I thought it was a chublet, but that's an absolute beauty. Good 6 or 7 ounce. It's not often you get dace like that, and lovely to get on the bread. So let's put him back, see if we can get another. Keep that mash going in. Messy stuff. Let's get another bread flake on the hook. But very positive bites. Lovely to see the float sail away. I thought that might have been another very next cast, but perhaps dragging. And we'll persevere with the bread, seeing as that's already scored. And as with the other swims, if the bigger baits like worm and bread aren't producing, I can always give maggot a go, start trickling a bit of maggot down. Oh, and that's another lovely fish. Looks like another dace. We've got an army helicopter coming overhead, so very dramatic. Oh, that's another beautiful dace on the maggot. Again, I'm hooked in the net. Look at that for a fish. Apologies for the noise. Big Chinook helicopter going over, but that's a beautiful dace. Well, they don't make dace like this so often these days. That's an absolute beauty from a small river. Another one from this glide above the fallen tree. Let's get him back, see whether we can get another. That's 2 beautiful days from this run down to the fallen tree. And it has taken a bit of perseverance, one on bread, one on maggots. But again, very rewarding, because you've got to work at it. Trying to work out where the fish are, what depth it is, where they want it presenting, what bait they want, whether to feed much or not. But those 2 fish have really warmed up a cold day, and seeing as this is the top of the stretch, I think I'll give it another minute or 2 and then we'll work our way back down. Well, in fishing there are sometimes places that just demand you stop when you're roving about, and this big back eddy, I don't know how deep it is, but it's under these huge conifers. I think there should be some fish holding potential there, so let's try that with a worm. You just have to be very careful of overhanging branches and other debris on the ground. These fine tip rods are not meant for going in the jungle. But we'll give this 5 minutes and then head down, try and find somewhere a bit more open. But there is a fish. Now, can I swing him out in this jungle? Wow, and that's another nice dace. Not quite a landing net job, but it's incredible what fish are in these tight spaces. Another fish to the maggot. Drop him back. So we'll keep going a bit longer. And it seems dace are the fish of the day. Just that one gudgeon in terms of variety, but I'm more than happy catching these bars of silver. Again, that tricky cast upstream under the conifers and let it drift down towards me. That's where I had the fish, just below my feet. Only fishing 2 foot of water. That seems like another solo dace, so having given it a good go, time to move again. And this is a special run that I've dropped in, probably about halfway back down the stretch. And the river really widens out here, slows down a bit, and there seems to be a decent bit of depth. So I'm going to give this a good go, trotting maggots. I did have a couple of quick runs down with bread as usual, but the colours on the trees in the distance from the low afternoon winter sun is pretty special, with the water so smooth and silent as it flows down towards those trees in the distant bend. It really is a nice place to sit, even if I'm not catching. So we'll give it a good go here on the maggot and see whether we can get anything. And that's another lovely dace. Pheasant. A pheasant over there and someone strimming over there. Country life. There's another little fish. Right down the bottom of a new run I've just set up in. And we've got a third species of the day. Tiny little roach. Let's get him back. That's remarkable how many swims today have thrown up one small fish, and you expect there to be a few more with it. But even with maggots, they've been hard to come by. Certainly not managed to find any shoals of fish, but that can often be the way in winter. It's not usually easy fishing, not unless you stumble upon one of those shoals. Of course, never having fished this stretch of the river before, I don't know whether this extra colour and the extra rain we've had in is usually good for the fishing here or can make it tricky. I'd imagine, a tinge of colour never does the fishing any harm usually. but it has been patchy, and I'm just glad that it's been patchy in such a stunning place. Perhaps move on now, and time for one more swim before I head home. As the sun sinks towards the horizon once again, I think this will do me for a last swim. Nice steady glide down to that bend. We'll see whether we can winkle out one last fish. There's a noisy pheasant over in the woods. He's the only company. Well, despite the usual 20 or 30 last casts, another fish wasn't to be. But we've had a few bites, and a couple of those days earlier on were pretty special, particularly from a small river on a cold December day. It's a brand new stretch of river for me, and it's just been a pleasure to explore. I always love trying out a new water, and it's been nice to get a few bites and show that there are fish here to be caught. Not seen another soul all day, and it's been marvellous to be immersed in nature's splendour. As the days get short and the nights get cold, we can't always expect to go out and fill our boots with fish, but it's still worth the effort, and I'm really glad that I got up early this morning, saw the sunrise, and I've enjoyed a few hours by the water. I really hope you've enjoyed joining me for this session, despite the fact we've not had a net full of fish. And if you're new to this channel, or you're one of the 70% of viewers who watch these videos and still haven't hit that subscribe button, please do it. Early Christmas present. It means a lot to a small channel trying to grow, and there's plenty more videos to enjoy. In fact, I've recently arranged the videos into different categories, so if you want to have a search by different themes, you can look at different videos by season or types of fish, different fishing methods, lots of different ways to find the content that's already on here. To all you faithful followers, thanks as always for your company. I really hope you have enjoyed it, and it might inspire you to get out, even though it is chilly. Get some warm clothes on, fill your flask up, and see if you can catch a few. Leave me a comment. I do look forward to reading them as always, and I will look forward to seeing you again soon on the bank.